Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.
What a great day today has been.
It's been a good day at Classic Gaming Brothers HQ.
That's right. We caught up on all our listener mail.
That's right. None of it.
Yep. Hey, I gotta still walk to the mailbox to check it.
Our HQ not only does not have doors that we can't leave, but apparently has an outdoor mailbox and a vault.
Yeah.
It's a complicated building.
We had, what's that guy named? Escher design.
Yeah. I do think MC Escher might have designed our building for sure.
Yeah, the stairs that go up and down, and then all of a sudden you're in producer Doug's office, and you don't know why you're there.
Yep, and neither does he.
Yeah, then he gets real mad and throws things at you, and you have to leave.
Yep, yeah, that sounds like producer Doug to me.
Yeah, it certainly does. So, Zach.
Yes, Seth.
What have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing Peak, released in 2025 by Team Peak. Peak is a climbing co-op game where you climb a few mountains. There's different biomes you go into as you play as these Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts who crash an airplane on a beach, and your goal is to stay alive. It uses some procedural generation to design the worlds and to put items and stuff around. And the intention is to climb up to certain areas without falling. This sounds like it would be easy if you've played video games that do climbing, but Peak makes it hard. There's different things you need to keep in mind, such as your hunger levels, your stamina. If you are hungry, your stamina is lower. There is also you can be injured, which will lower your stamina, and there is weight of things you carry, which if that is higher, it will lower your stamina. And your stamina is required to climb. So if you run out of stamina, you will fall. There are some ways to get around this. You can drink an energy drink, which will give you a boost of stamina, though could cause a sugar crash, which will leave you unhappy and with barely any stamina. There is also a way for your friends, as it is co-op, to assist you in climbing. They could reach out their hand, and when you get close enough, they will automatically pull you up to safety. It's a really fun game. It's one of those games where I think things can go bad really fast, and that makes it a lot of fun. One of my favorite parts about the game is it uses VoIP. So obviously with VoIP, if you are close to someone, you can hear them better. If you are further away, you can't hear them as well. So sometimes you'll be talking to your friend as you're both climbing, and all of a sudden their voice goes very distant, and then you can't hear them anymore because they fell off the mountain.
Oh, that's funny.
It is a fun game. I really like it. It's one of those games that I can see myself playing a lot of and probably really enjoying with a large group of people, though I think the largest you can get is 4, but still, it's one of those games that I think it's really best enjoyed with multiple people. There is a single player offline mode, but I don't see how fun that can be because a lot of the enjoyment I'm having is just from interactions with others. But that is Peak, developed by Team Peak, and it's on Steam, and it's also pretty cheap. I think it's $7.99. For less than $10, you can have a fun game of climbing things. But yeah, that's Peak. Check it out.
That's a lot of fun.
Seth, what about you? What have you been playing?
I've recently been playing Ghost of a Tale, which was developed and published by CGB, which sounds like the name of a company that I would create and then spell it incorrectly because there is an I and there would not be a B. So if it's not Seth at CGB, it's CG. Perhaps they are a cousin of ours. Ghost of a Tale was released in 2018, and I grabbed it on discount during the summer sale. It's a action RPG game where you play as Tilo, who is a mouse who is also a minstrel, and you start off in the dungeon and you have to try to escape from a dungeon. It's a 2018 stealth adventure game. I'm guessing is really what it's kind of. It says action RPG. The action part in the dungeon has been stealth and hiding, so more of a stealth adventure action RPG, I guess. The models of the mice are cute, and they wear little hoods that they wear. They look like babushkas, I guess. It's little grandmothers. It's what they all wear. And then one of the early levels in the dungeon, you are trying to escape, and you end up, there is a prison cell that you break into, and there is a frog, and he is a prisoner. And you're like, can I help you? And he's like, well, what can you help me with? And you're like, well, I can break you out. And he's like, well, I have this little lake in here, and there's flies, and I don't have to do much, so I don't really need to get broken out because I'm pretty happy in here. He's like, but I could use a drink of alcohol, so if you find some alcohol for me, then like bring that back. So you go on a fetch quest to get the alcohol, and then you can ask him a bunch of questions, and he's kind of a drunk frog pirate, so his answers aren't too helpful, and then you just are like, all right, I'm leaving. But it's a fun little game. Definitely has like that older adventure action style from almost a decade ago. It definitely feels like it, which it's just a simpler time for things. I like the premise of the game, and I definitely feel like it's playing like in Redwall. It feels like it's set in the Redwall world, and it feels like very akin, and I like personified animals, so it's been a fun game. That's a Ghost of a Tale.
Nice. That's exciting. Well, today we're going to be talking about a character who has a long history and also a very storied history in terms of the video games he's been part of. We're talking about Batman, the Caped Crusader, as some call him. Batman is, he's a lot. I mean, he has a really deep history going back to the early days of comic books. Before we get into his history, and what we'll do is we'll go through just the general history of Batman, like we did Superman. We covered, his history, the history of the comics, the history of the movies, and then we'll get into games. But before we do, Seth, what are your memories and thoughts on Batman and any Batman games?
I definitely enjoyed the Batman Arkham Asylum. Was probably a game that I really enjoyed. I thought that Rocksteady did a really good job with Batman Arkham Asylum. I thought they did a pretty good job with the sequel, and that's going to be it in regards to the two Batman games that I like. I know they did a third one. I played a little bit of it. There's a lot of cars and not really Arkham Asylum. I feel like Arkham Asylum and the second one, what was the other one?
Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and Arkham Knight.
A couple of those games are good.
I liked Arkham City, where the plot is that a borough of Gotham becomes like a city prison.
Yes, yep.
And Bruce Wayne is, he goes in undercover to investigate because like Jim knows he's Batman, so Jim has him arrested, and like he goes in, gets his Batman suit, and immediately goes to town on beating up people in prison.
I like that game. And I also like Asylum. I think Asylum was a really good game. It benchmarked how to do stealth differently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In previous stealth games, you would actually hide from enemies, and in Batman Arkham Asylum, you felt like you were stalking enemies, which is what Batman does. And I think that kind of switch on stealth genres really helped cement that game as like a really core game in the genre, and as a top game in if you look back at all the games, especially all the games that Batman was involved in. Because I also played, I believe, some of the games on SNES for Batman, and I don't think they're any good. That is one of the curse of Batman games, is most of them are bad until Arkham. I've definitely played them. I definitely don't know if I've had fun playing them. You've even made me play some, but yeah, those are my memories, both recent and old, of Batman of yore. What about you, Zach?
I definitely remember playing a Batman game on some older console, but I can't remember if it was a Sega Genesis one or the SNES one. We had some family friends that also had a Sega Genesis, and I think at one point they had one of the Batman games, and I might have played a little bit of it. But what I really remember is both the Batman animated series, which I really loved, and the Batman Arkham games, which I also am a fan of. I didn't play those until recently, but within the last like maybe 5 years during COVID, I like really got into playing through games that I just like hadn't played in a while because there was nothing else to do. So I played a lot of like games that were just on my backlog, and I played through Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and I started Arkham Knight, and then I stopped playing it. Maybe I'll pick it up at some point. I liked those a lot. I really liked Arkham Asylum. I thought it was a really solid game. My roommate in college had Arkham Asylum on the Wii U, and that was a really cool experience because the Arkham Asylum on the Wii U utilizes the gamepad for your map. So you can't pull up the map in game like you can when you're playing on the PC or playing on the Xbox, but you have to look at your gamepad, and it does add a little bit of like tension because you're kind of doing it in real time as opposed to pausing the game and looking at the map and such. So everything else is done in real time. Makes the Wii experience really cool. But getting into the history of Batman, Batman's history, again, is really tied to comic history. Batman as a character first appeared in Detective Comics number 27, published in 1939. Detective Comics was an anthology series published by Detective Comics Incorporated, founded by Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, one of the founders of National Allied Publications. Wheeler Nicholson founded Detective Comics Inc. largely to just publish Detective Comics, right? He had this line of comics called Detective Comics. He wanted to publish them outside of National Allied, so he started a company to just do that. Detective Comics featured, as the name implies, stories about gumshoe-style detectives. Not even Batman didn't show up until number 27, so
right.
These were just detective comics about detectives, and often solving murders or mysteries that often featured racist Chinese caricatures. In 1938, National Allied absorbed Detective Comics Incorporated due to Wheeler Nicholson being incredibly indebted to the two other co-founders, Harry Donenfeld and Jack Leibowitz. In 1939, issue 27 of Detective Comics was published. It contained the story The Batman, Case of the Chemical Syndicate, written by Bill Finger and illustrated by Bob Kane. This story introduced everyone to Batman, a caped vigilante persona of the millionaire socialite Bruce Wayne, and also the comic introduced Commissioner Gordon. The character himself of Batman was inspired by other masked vigilante characters, such as the Shadow and the Green Hornet, who were largely popular due to their radio programs. The Green Hornet in particular is a lot like Batman because the Green Hornet is a rich man who is also a masked vigilante, but the major difference is that while Batman uses fun gadgets, the Green Hornet uses a gun that shoots gas pellets. So Batman will use a batarang. Green Hornet just goes pow pow and puts people to sleep.
Yeah, kind of like Sandman. The Wesley Dawes Sandman, not the Neil Gaiman Sandman, who also puts people to sleep, but in a drastically different way.
Yes. Another inspiration for the character was the 1926 film The Bat and its 1930 sound remake, The Bat Whispers, both directed by Roland West, which I have to say, Roland West was very clever with those names, with the 1926 silent film being remade as a sound remake and called The Bat Whispers. So it's there's sound in this one. The story of the Bat, the movie, he's not a hero. He's actually a villain that stalks and terrorizes people in a mansion, but there are some similarities to what we would know as Batman. The Bat uses ropes to climb. He goes onto rooftops and escapes off of rooftops after he stalks and terrorizes people. He uses a light signal that has a bat insignia in the center of the signal to indicate that he's arriving soon, and he also dresses like a bat.
He's somebody that terrorizes people and uses a light to let them know he's coming.
Basically, yeah. He announces his arrival.
He's like, watch out, folks. Plenty of time for you to get away because I put up this giant light symbol.
Well, he shines it into the room they're in, not in the sky.
Oh, okay. I thought he was putting a sky.
That'd be really funny. Just he's in the area.
Watch out.
He's in the neighborhood.
Lock your doors. The guy is here.
He, in fact, shines it into the room you're in so that you'll know he's coming.
The character of Batman would appear in future other Detective Comic issues, with issue 33 fleshing out his origins as an orphan whose parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne, were shot one night by a mugger named Joe Chill, which is, an unsuspecting mugger's name. By issue 38, we were introduced to Dick Grayson, aka Robin, Batman's sidekick, and young ward, and young man about town that he hangs out with. Various other issues would introduce villains like Penguin, Clayface, the Riddler, and Two-Face. In 1940, Batman would get his own comic series with issue 1 introducing the character of the Joker, who became probably the most famous antagonist to Batman. And by issue 4, it was established that the events take place in the fictional Gotham City, which is in the years that have followed, either located somewhere where New York is located or where New Jersey is located. Because the way that it works in the world of the comic lands, DC is set in fictional cities and Marvel is set in real cities, except sometimes when they are not in DC. Sometimes they're lazy. The Batman comic series ran for a very long time, going on from throughout the golden age of the 1940s and early 1950s into the silver age of the 50s through the 70s and pushing through the bronze age into the modern age. Batman and Superman are a classification of heroes that really exists throughout most of the ages of comics that you would call like gold and silver. But during those ages, their type of comic changes to be more befitting of those. Like golden age Batman is very different than modern age Batman. He's the same character, but it is very differently written and drawn, and it just looks and feels different. The comics would slowly but surely introduce a variety of allies, such as Bruce Wayne's butler Alfred, a bunch of different Robins as they go through his ward time.
Sometimes they die, sometimes they just
sometimes
leave
they die,
him.
sometimes they grow up.
One of them is his kid. The last Robin, I think, of the like modern age, the current Robin, is Damian Wayne, who is his child.
Some of them get shot, some of them become different superheroes.
Yeah, some of them die and come back. Like, I think Dick Grayson was the one that got nearly beat, or was that Jason Todd? One of them got nearly beaten to death by the Joker, and in like one comic line dies, but then they brought him back as a villain.
Yeah.
I think that was Jason Todd, because Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing.
Also, Commissioner Gordon's daughter is Barbara, who eventually becomes Batwoman and also gets shot, as well as a variety of other criminals for Batman to fight. I believe actually everyone that Batman ever becomes allied with gets shot at some point in time, up to and including Alfred, the Commissioner, all the Robins, and Barbara.
Yeah, and Batman. I mean, but Batman also gets his back broken.
To be fair, Batman's usually the instigator of, he's responding to crimes, but he is the costume vigilante. So if anyone's going to get shot, it should be Batman.
If anyone's getting shot around here, it's Batman.
The entire DC universe would also get rebooted during the new 52 era and again during Rebirth in 2016. I remember both of those resets.
Yeah, Rebirth is the weird one because that's when they put the Watchmen universe into the DC canon.
Yeah.
Doomsday Clock with the button is one of the like defining issues where they find the smiley face button with the blood.
Yeah, because they just want to make everything in the same world. Sandman technically takes place in the DC universe. Mm-hmm. The Neil Gaiman Sandman.
Yes.
And the Wesley Dobbs Sandman.
And the other one. There's another one from the Silver Age where he wears like red and yellow spandex. It's Garrett Sanford.
Garrett Sanford is the other Sandman.
Yes.
Who runs around in the spandex. Then there's Wesley Dobbs.
Yep, there's also Hector Hall, who is another Sandman, the third Sandman, who later becomes, or was the Silver Scarab. And he shows up in Volume 2 of the Neil Gaiman Sandman, who is Dream of the Endless, aka Morpheus, who is a god.
Yes. Wesley Dobbs also shows up in Sandman. As in one panel. Now, beyond the comics, Batman had his earliest adaptations in a series of serials in 1943, starring Lewis Wilson as Batman and Douglas Croft as Robin. A follow-up serial called Batman and Robin would release through 1949 and star Robert Lowry as Batman and Johnny Duncan as Robin. In the 1960s, during the Silver Age of comics, Batman was adapted to TV as a series just called Batman because it was the 60s and TV was cool and radio dramas were out. This Batman TV show was starring Adam West as Batman, who was, in my mind, the best Batman, and Burt Ward as Robin. This show heavily leaned into the more comic book style, complete with actions often being spelled out in large title cards when people fought. The show also had a somewhat campy vibe with upbeat music, silly gadgets, and often ridiculous catchphrases. And the one episode that I think I watched multiple times was the episode where the League of Villains that are fighting Batman have a submarine and they get a gun to dehydrate everybody. Yes. And they go around and dehydrate people to piles of sand.
Yes.
And Adam West carries a bomb somewhere on a dock. He's like on like Coney Island or something. Like he's on some like pier.
Yeah. That's from the 66 movie. And he says there's just some days you can't get rid of a bomb.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
The show ran for 3 seasons, consisted of 120 episodes, and then a film which involved Batman running around a pier with a bomb, which brought Batman back to the big screen. There was also a few cartoon versions of Batman around the time done by Filmation and Hanna-Barbera, where Batman was voiced by Owen Soul. This would include the Batman Superman Hour, Super Friends, and a crossover with new Scooby-Doo movies, where Batman would team up with the Scooby Gang.
Holy sidewalks! It's Shaggy and Scooby. Like, hi, Crusaders. I've been guarding the yard.
Yeah, me too.
Good work, troops. Who's in the lab?
Professor Flanky and the kids. The bad guys went in the factory to sneak up a rear staircase, no doubt.
An excellent deduction, Robin. Shaggy, you and Scooby stand there in the shadow of the building and guard the vehicles.
Where do we go, Batman? The factory or the lab?
The lab. We'll enter through the skylight.
This is before we would get the Batman, the animated series, which Zach will talk about, where Batman is serious. This is still Batman's kind of a little kooky, because pretty much any cartoon of this era was just aimed at kids and was ridiculous. For anyone who listened to our show back to our Addams Family episode, there is a show the Addams Family crossed over with, which is the same crossover with the new Scooby-Doo movie with Batman. It was like Batman and Scooby-Doo, and then Addams Family and Scooby-Doo. But there was no Batman and Addams Family.
There is a clip we played in that episode where Batman meets Lurch. So in the Batman 66 series, this was from the live action series, they did a crossover. There is this one segment that happens where like Batman and Robin are climbing a wall, and it's kind of like a reoccurring gag because that's where they would put in cameos of like famous people, and in one episode is Lurch they run into.
Oh, it's you, Batman. Gave me quite a start.
Yes, citizen, you may return to your harpsichord.
We're on official business.
Oh.
Now, Batman's character became associated strongly with this 1966 show and the cartoon, often being somewhat viewed as a joke by people and never really considered serious outside of fans of the comic. So fans of the comic, they followed the comic, so they saw the evolving elements of Batman. However, outside of these comics, if you weren't familiar with Batman, your only exposure to him was probably the cartoons, which were silly, or the live action show, which was silly. The comics did try to distance themselves. They had darker storylines and art styles becoming kind of the main aesthetic for Batman going into the 1980s, but it was probably a shock for a lot of non-comic fans in 1989 when Tim Burton brought a much darker version of the character to the screen. 1989's Batman, just called Batman, gives us a Gotham City inspired by Art Deco and Gothic aesthetics, and took many cues from the equally dark comics The Killing Joke by Alan Moore and The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. The story is an origin story for the Joker, played by Jack Nicholson, that ties into the origins of Batman, played by Michael Keaton. In fact, you find out in this 1989 movie that it wasn't Joe Chill that shot Batman's parents. It was, in fact, Jack Napier, the Joker, which is the name they give him in this movie, Jack Napier. It is not the canon name for the Joker because he goes by many names. The 1989 movie would inspire the TV show Batman the Animated Series, which aired from 1992 until 1995 and starred Kevin Conroy as the voice of Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. An animated movie based on the show, Mask of the Phantasm, would release theatrically in 1993. It was a commercial failure. The 1989 movie would get a sequel, Batman Returns, in 1992. The sequel, however, didn't do as well and led to the studio ditching Tim Burton for the third movie and bringing in Joel Schumacher for Batman Forever in 1995, starring Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne, replacing Michael Keaton, and Joel Schumacher would also direct Batman and Robin, starring George Clooney as Bruce Wayne in 1997, replacing Val Kilmer. Both take on a much more campy tone, with Batman Forever having the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey, and a goofy Two-Face, played by Tommy Lee Jones, and Batman and Robin featuring Mr. Freeze, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who uses way too many ice and snow puns. These movies are very distinctly not serious. They are goofy, they are silly, they are over the top, they kind of lean into that old 1960s camp. Following the commercial and critical failure of the Batman and Robin film, there was a bit of a hiatus of live-action Batman films until the more grounded, darker Nolan trilogy of Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. When the DCEU kicked off in 2013 with Man of Steel, the follow-up film, 2016's Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice gave us Batman played by Ben Affleck. He would reprise the role in Justice League in 2017, 2021's Zack Snyder's Justice League, and finally in 2023's The Flash, which would also see a return of both Michael Keaton as a Batman from an alternate universe and George Clooney as a Batman from an alternate universe. It's a weird movie. Robert Pattinson would portray the character of Batman in 2022, just in a film called The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, and he is set to reprise the role in The Batman Part 2, which is, as of recording of this episode, part of what's called the DC Elseworlds canon for the movies. This is separate from the DCU, which is James Gunn's whole creation that he's working on. Supposedly, there is supposed to be a Batman movie set in the DCU called The Brave and the Bold.
So we talked about comics, we talked about movies, and we are the classic gaming brothers, so let's talk about games.
We'll do that next episode.
Next episode. Dun, dun, dun. The earliest Batman game was simply called Batman and was released in 1986 for the Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, and MSX. Developed by John Rittman and published by Ocean Software, the game is an isometric action game where you play as the titular Batman and you're tasked with finding Robin, who has been captured. He's not just lost, he is captured. To find Robin, you need to collect pieces of the Batcraft, a hovercraft device that apparently was broken. And the game is fairly innovative at the time, as it features a save game system where if Batman collects a Batstone, he can respawn at the beginning of the level upon a game over, instead of at the beginning of the game, which is helpful. Players at the time loved the game, with the Crash giving it a 93%, Sinclair User giving it a 5 out of 5 stars, and your Sinclair giving it a 9 out of 10. The next game, developed by Special FX Software and published by Ocean in 1988, would be Batman, the Caped Crusader, released on the Amiga, the Amstrad CPC, the Atari ST, Apple II, MS-DOS, ZX Spectrum, and C64. You play, as you would expect, as Batman. In a side-scrolling action game, the game utilizes a comic book aesthetic, with different areas appearing like comic book panels. There are also two separate stories, Fete Worse Than Death, which Fete being like a gala, where you have to fight Joker, and a Bird in the Hand, where you have to fight the Penguin. Like the previous Batman, people praised the game, with your Sinclair rating it a 9 out of 10, Computer Gaming World praising the graphics, though there was a criticism which also came from the Computer Gaming World review, with emphasis that the game put too much on mazes and puzzles.
Ocean would go 3 for 3, and in 1989 released Batman the movie for the ZX Spectrum, Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, MS-DOS, C64, and MSX. Like the previous game, it was a side-scrolling action game, but with more emphasis on action, less emphasis on being a maze or a puzzle. The levels adapt scenes from the movie, such as you fighting Jack Napier in the beginning of the film before he becomes the Joker, or driving the Batmobile through Gotham City. Batman the movie, the game, is notable as it was bundled with Amiga 500 computers, leading to around 186,000 units selling during its run. This would be one of the more successful bundles done by Commodore. They bundled a couple of games with computers, but people liked this one. We now reach a period where 4 of the following Batman games were all based on the 1989 movie. Batman for the NES, Batman for the Game Boy, Batman for the Genesis, and Batman for the arcade. The NES game, released in 1989 and developed and published by Sunsoft, is largely a platforming-centric game. You play as Batman, you could do different wall jumps, you can traverse different levels by doing wall jumps. You also have a projectile weapon that you can kind of use different projectiles, and these require ammo, which you pick up as cartridges. The plot of the game actually does not follow the movie, just some of the locations are from the movie. So, for example, you fight like Killer Moth, Firebug, Deadshot, the Electrocutioner, and Joker is the final boss. The Game Boy version, released in 1990, is a bit like Super Mario Land in aesthetic, except you play as Batman instead of Mario, and he has a gun. In fact, he just has a gun. Like, you just shoot things and they explode. It's kind of like Mega Man meets Mario Land. It's a very generic looking platformer where you just go through different enemies that are mostly just generic goons, and eventually you fight the Joker. The Genesis version, also developed by Sunsoft and released in 1991, is a bit more of a beat-em-up style. You patrol Gotham City and you beat up bad guys who run at you. The story follows the movie a little more closely. There are different scenes that are kind of approximations of the events of the movie. Similarly, Similarly, the 1991 arcade game by Atari was also a beat 'em up, though had much larger, more colorful looking sprites. It definitely was a bit more detailed than the Genesis version, and it actually used audio from the movie, such as voice samples of Jack Nicholson and Michael Keaton.
Return of the Joker in 1991 would release on the NES with a remake called Revenge of the Joker, kind of like the opposite of Return of the Jedi. Revenge of the Joker was released on Genesis in 1992. The NES version is a side-scrolling running gun where you use a wrist projector that can shoot different ammunition like batarangs, shield stars, and sonic neutralizers. You explore different levels, fighting off the usual mess of generic villains. It has been described as being very similar to a Mega Man game, but with Batman instead of Mega Man. A Game Boy version, which is more of a platformer than a shooter, would also be released in 1992. In the same year as the Game Boy release in 1992, Batman Returns was in theaters, and that meant more adaptations. In total, there are 9 different Batman Returns games, each being just a tad bit different. These versions were released on the Game Gear, the Genesis, the MS-DOS, the NES, the Atari Lynx, the SNES, the Master System, the Sega CD, and the Amiga. The Genesis and Sega CD versions, developed by Malibu Interactive, are very similar, with the main difference that the Sega CD had 3D driving segments, scenes from the movie, and CD audio quality. The rest of the game is a 2D platformer that plays similarly to the Sunsoft Batman game from 1990. The game follows the plot of the movie, with Batman being framed for murder by the Penguin. The NES version was developed by Konami, and it's a beat-em-up similar to Double Dragon, where you go from one side of the screen to the other side of the screen, all while fighting off plenty of generic enemies. Your goal is to fight off these enemies to stop both Catwoman and the Penguin. The SNES version, released in 1993, also a beat-em-up game, but features better graphics than the NES version. The gameplay is also more akin to Final Fight, except, of course, instead of the characters from Final Fight, it's Batman.
As the 1990s rolled along, the Batman animated series began to air, and Konami would release a video game based on the show, released under the same name as the series, so it's Batman the Animated Series, the game. This is an action platformer where you play as either Robin or Batman. Both characters have unique abilities, such as Robin being able to walk on ceilings, which is an odd ability, but Robin is historically, his family came from trapezists, so I guess that maybe explains why he can walk on ceilings, and Batman is able to use a grappling hook. They plan to bring an updated version of the game to the Super Nintendo, but these plans changed. Between Season 1 and 2 of the Batman Animated Series, it kind of went through a rebrand. They changed the name to The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and the animation style slightly changed. So, Konami had to kind of rethink things, and they would release a SNES game also titled The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and adapting scenes from the TV show as a 2D platformer. In 1995, Clockwork Tortoise released a version of The Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis and Sega CD. The Genesis version is a run-and-gun, similar to Return of the Joker. The plot follows Mr. Freeze trying to ice Gotham over. To help him, he enlists Two-Face, the Mad Hatter, and the Joker. The Sega CD version features racing missions, where you have to pursue the Riddler, Poison Ivy, and the Joker. There are also missions where you pilot the Batwing and go after Clayface. What's really cool about the Sega CD version is that it includes 15 minutes of brand new animated segments that were drawn by the original animators of the show and featured the entire original cast reprising their roles. So it's basically, you get an extra episode of The Adventures of Batman and Robin, but was only available to watch on the Sega CD.
Also, in 1995, Batman Forever, the game based on the movie, would be released on a variety of consoles, specifically the SNES, the Sega Genesis, the Game Gear, Game Boy, and MS-DOS, and a unique version released for the Tiger Electronics R-Zone. Batman Forever is a beat-em-up game built in the same engine as Mortal Kombat 2, and like Mortal Kombat, the game uses digitized sprites. Also like Mortal Kombat, there is fighting mode called Training, where you can fight different enemies from the game. Like the movie, it would get pretty negative reviews, with one person from Computer Game Review did note that the actual experience of playing Batman Forever isn't much better than watching that of the movie. Batman and Robin, released in 1998, would see the characters jump to 3D in video games. You explore the 3D world of Gotham, taking control of either Batman, Robin, or Batgirl in events that coincide with the plot of the movie. Impressively enough, the game actually has sandbox elements with traffic simulation and real-time events. events. There are vehicle segments, with each character having their own unique vehicle. Events in the game occur at certain times and don't have distinct triggers, so you could do different missions around the city before parts of the story unfold. Despite being arguably pretty ambitious, the game got pretty mediocre reviews, though it did win the most faithful use of a movie license. That was an award from the 1998 official PlayStation Magazine's Editors Award. The movie's now basically over until they get restarted much later. Future games would have to continue adapting elements of Batman the Animated Series and the sequel series Batman Beyond, because the thing with Batman is that Batman is a license. It's a property. Somebody owns Batman, and if you want to make Batman things, you have to go to those people who own Batman and ask permission to make Batman things. And those people will probably want you to make Batman things that correspond with other Batman things they make money on, because that's how they make money. And so, if there's no movies to make video games on, you must make video games on existing Batman material. So like there was a racing game, Batman Gotham City Racer, Batman Chaos in Gotham City for the Game Boy Color, and Batman Beyond got a video game, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker for N64, PS1, and Game Boy Color.
Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, despite its name, is not related to Batman Return of the Joker from 1991. It's a video game tie-in for a 2000 TV movie of the same name, based in the Batman Beyond universe. For those unaware, Batman Beyond was a follow-up to Batman the Animated Series, but set in the future. Bruce Wayne is now retired and also old and cranky, and in his place there is a teenager named Terry McGinnis, played by Will Friedle, who takes on the role of Batman and does different missions and fights a variety of new villains, a lot of them inspired by old Batman villains. Basically, they took old Batman villains and they made them young, but they also made them like children or related or just inspired by the original villains, because most of the original villains are dead.
I really did want to see a crossover of Batman Beyond and Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century, and have them solve crimes together, because I think that'd be fun.
The Return of the Joker movie and the game, as the name implies, involves the Joker seemingly returning from a very definitive death. Without giving too much away of the movie, the Joker dies in a way that's like, there's no coming back from this. It's one cut of the movie is fairly more violent than the other. They had to actually edit it down for later releases, but his return is a large part of this mystery. It really is more about how the Joker could have returned versus is the Joker actually back. The game, developed by Kemco and released by Ubisoft, is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you control Terry. It's not a very good game. In fact, Seth had me play it for a retro rewind once, and I hated it. The critics were equally rough, comparing the game to Superman 64, with reviews from Next Generation giving it 1 out of 5 stars, the official US PlayStation Magazine giving it half a star out of 5, and N64 Gamer giving it 13%. This was not a good game. In 2005, to tie into the new movie of the same name, Batman Begins was released for PS2, GameCube, GBA, and Xbox. The original cast returned to play their characters with the exception of Gary Oldman, who does not return to play Jim Gordon for this game. He was probably too busy being Gary Oldman and being incredibly wealthy and wanted by Hollywood. Another game was planned to adapt the sequel film, Batman the Dark Knight, but was canceled in 2008. After the cancellation, the rights for the Batman games reverted to Warner Brothers, who would go on to release Batman Arkham Asylum in 2009, which set up the Arkham series of stealth action games. Arkham Asylum and the other Arkham games would also see the return of the now late Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne and Mark Hamill as the Joker. It's really great, especially if you're a big fan of the old Batman cartoon, to play the games, because you just feel like you're playing through one of the old episodes. They're just even more edgy than they were back then. Now, there are plenty of Batman games. Some that we skipped, some that are not that interesting. There was a Batman cartoon maker, but it wasn't made by the Spider-Man cartoon maker people. It was made by a different group, and there's not that much to say about it. It's just Spider-Man cartoon maker, but Batman themed. Needless to say, Batman is no stranger to games, and I'm going to bet you anything that he will not be a stranger to games going forward. In fact, the character has shown up in Kill the Justice League, in the Injustice fighting games. I think there's even a VR version of Arkham Asylum that you can play. There's just Batman galore. So that is Batman. I don't know if Seth has any thoughts on Batman before we go into our retro rewinds.
That commercial with do you remember that commercial? The Batman commercial? The football player gets knocked out or something, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, Yeah, I'm okay. And he's answering all the questions, and then he's just like, "I am Batman."
Okay, I'm fine. Let's go. Hold on. Where are you? I'm in New York.
Who am I?
Hey, Coach.
And who are you?
I'm Batman.
Sit down.
You don't understand. I'm Batman.
I do.
Not going anywhere for a while? Grab a Snickers.
Hello, good citizen. My name is Batman. You could be my assistant. Would you like that? Would you like to ride with Batman?
That's my only thought on Batman.
Getting into our retro rewind, Seth had me play Air Diver for the Sega Genesis. Released in 1990 by Capia, Air Diver, or better known by its full name, Air Diver F-119 Stealth Flight Simulation, is, as the name implies, a combat simulation game. You play as a pilot controlling the fictional F-119D stealth fighter, and you fight terrorists. It's not a great flight sim game. In fact, I'm going to describe the experience of when I played Air Diver for the first time. I started the game and everything was dark. I pressed a button and my cockpit lowered and the plane took off and I flew 5 seconds in the air and then I was hit by a missile and I exploded and I had to restart the game. It does have really fun, almost like Top Gun style music. Overall, the game just kind of feels janky and really doesn't look good. Like, the graphics are just not great. And I usually don't complain about graphics unless they really stand out or they take away something from the game. And the thing with simulation games is, in my opinion, they really need graphics to look decent or recognizable because they are simulating something. And it's really hard to, like, experience the simulation if you're just distracted by how bad it looks. Looking up reviews, it looks like no one else liked the game either, so I'm glad I wasn't the odd one out. Does it hold up? I don't think so. Next week, Seth, you can play Paladin's Quest for the Super Nintendo.
Great, thank you. Zach had me play Dragon's Fury for the Sega Genesis, which was originally released in 1990, developed by Compile and released as Dragon Crush on the PC Engine. Dragon's Fury is a port of the game re-released essentially on the Genesis in 1992. It's from Technosoft and Tengen, and it's a pinball game, but not just any old pinball game. It is a fantasy horror pinball game, which is great. The music is great. It sounds similar to music that you can find in other Technosoft games. As a reminder, they did Herzog Zwei and Thunder Force 2. The game is probably one of the best pinball games on the Sega Genesis, even better than Sonic Pinball. Dragon's Fury just takes the cake. It's a really fun pinball game. You have to get your pinball up multiple tiers and then eventually have a boss battle in the pinball game. It gets tough, and it will be tough, and it will be a challenge. I'm glad that Zach had me play this game because I didn't even know it existed. So if you're looking for a pinball game on the Sega Genesis, I would recommend Dragon's Fury. That's going to be it for the Retro Rewind. If you want to listen to more Classic Gaming Brothers episodes, you can always find us wherever podcasts are listened to, be that Spotify, Apple, or YouTube now. You can go over to YouTube and give us a subscribe because we're close to 100, and that would be great if we got 100. I mean, you can continue to not listen to us on YouTube and just listen to us on Spotify, but you do whatever you want to do. Furthermore, if you want to email us to tell us to stop doing these extremely long episodes on various comic book characters, you can always email us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. And you can also, while there, you can also go to our website, classicgamingbrothers.com. You can also follow us on all our social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch at Classic Gaming Brothers, and Blue Sky, CG Brothers Pod. Zach, is there anything else that I'm missing?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Zach.
And I've been Seth.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right.